Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Mahamudra for the People, and Happy New Year. This is January, I suppose, 2023. I hope you had good holidays, and yeah, I hope that this new year is something that's meaningful. I guess maybe I'll start by saying I'd posted something on Instagram slash Facebook this morning about the importance of asking oneself the question of really, I guess, how invested do I want to be in causing the conditions for my own awakening, right? And I think I said it much better this morning. But so this, and then the other question being like, to what extent do I want to stop all of the conscious and unconscious ways that I contribute to the suffering of others by, really not really taking full responsibility for my own awakening. So why do I bring this up right now? I bring it up because here we are, January of 2023, and this is Mahamudra for the People. And what better way to kind of have like this spacious relationship to a kind of resolution, which isn't the kind of resolution that maybe hopefully we won't break by February 1st, but this resolution in recognizing the sky-like nature of mind, right? This resolution in recognizing the simplicity of the path, right? The resolution of recognizing our own fundamental wakefulness, right? The resolution of recognizing that we have absolutely everything needed right here, in our heart, right here in the experience of mind, etc. And that we may not actually necessarily need to, go through this heroic journey of even necessarily, creating a relationship to qualities that we may not think we have, because we actually have them, right now. So I just want to maybe start today off with that. This is my kind of, wish for all beings, that all beings are able to, if you've been asking yourself these questions, which I did on New Year's Eve day, in a moment of my own suffering, which was like, Justin, like, when are you going to break this open? When are you going to stop? When are you going to, when are you going to stop? When are you going to know your own mind? And I think this is something that we should always ask ourselves. And we also need to be really careful about asking this question too many times, right? About this kind of question becoming a weaponization, a way of kind of beating ourselves down, right? Because that's not what Mahamudra is, right? So asking this constructively, supportively, right, in a loving way. And then also, if we haven't asked ourselves these questions, then maybe it's time to start. But I know of many of the people here who I've met at least once, many I've met a number of times. I know that you all have been asking these questions. It's helpful to do. So with that, let me get my little fancy meditation timer app up. And so maybe we can begin by sitting for 10 minutes, and then we'll get back into third Karmapa's Mahamudra aspiration prayer. And we'll begin with sitting for 20 minutes. Allow yourself to settle your body, right? Letting it just be natural and relaxed and at ease. You don't need to be tense. You don't need to sit like a statue. Just allow your body to settle as it does. And if sitting is hard, then lay down. And if laying down is hard, then stand up. It doesn't really matter, right? It's just the primary thing is comfort and ease. Right? Let your gaze, if you can sit with your eyes open, be directly in front of you, right, where the focal point is space itself. It's like trying to hang a sweater on space. And then let your mind be relaxed and easy. No big deal, nothing huge to do. You must sit like this for 20 minutes, trying to allow yourself to let go of the past, to let go of the future, to remove any anxiety or pressure about this particular moment, whatever this is, this thing we call the present. Letting go of our need to control anything or figure out what this whole thing is, and just resting. Um, so just for anybody who's a little new to this, I'm using a translation I've not used recently, but this is by Nalanda Bodhi Publications. It's called Songs and Instructions of the Karmapas. So just everybody knows what text I'm working with. And we left off on stanza 19, and there's a total of 25, so I think we'll finish this today. And there will also be time for people to ask questions, should questions arise. And as I did last week, I'm kind of going to go back to the last one we did, the last stanza. So Rangjung Dorje, third Karmapa, reminds us that free from mental contrivance, the mind is Mahamudra. Free from extremes, it is the great middle way. Since it encompasses everything, it is Dzogchen. May we gain confidence, the confidence of realizing all through knowing one. Right? So, the nature of mind, or the non-dual state, is Mahamudra, is Madhyamaka, is Dzogchen. So this is, and of course, this exhortation, may we, all recognize this one thing, right? So this is helpful for those who, we're planning on mastering Madhyamaka and then mastering Mahamudra and then mastering Dzogchen. Maybe you don't need to go about doing that, right? Maybe, and especially within the context of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, there's a very heavy emphasis on simplicity, right? And so this is really lovely because, Rangjung Dorje is pointing out the simplicity of this, right? That we don't need to go around mastering each one of these things. We just need to master one, right? Or we could say we don't need to, master the whole Buddhist corpus. We just need to be able to know our own mind, right? Which is actually a lot more approachable, even though on days when we're feeling a little out of sorts, that can actually be an incredibly daunting thing to actually begin to even consider approaching. Nevertheless, we try, right? This is what the whole, path is about. So he goes on to say, free of attachment, great bliss is unceasing. Free of ego clinging to free of clinging to characteristics, luminous clarity is unobscured. Beyond the intellect, non-conceptuality is spontaneously present. Without effort, may these experiences be unceasing. And so what he's pointing out here is that the great bliss of being able to rest directly into the experience of everything that's arising in this moment, right? In this moment, in this moment, in this moment, in this moment, is experienced when we let go of attachment, right? So take a moment to think about your day, or this week, or this year, and all of the meaning you have assigned to it, all of the things you want to have happen, everything that you think you are, everything that you think you need to be, everything that you think you need to cultivate, everything that you think you need to remove, right, from your experience of how you are, who you are, right, qualities that you think maybe need to be removed. Right? And so what is being pointed out here is that, letting go of this, right? This is attachment. It's attachment to who you think you are, attachment to who you think you need to be, attachment to how you think you need to show up, attachment to what you think this week is supposed to be, what this day is supposed to be, this year is supposed to be, attachment to body, attachment to eye color, attachment to things we hear, attachment to the sounds that we speak, right? Let the whole thing go, right? Rest into the blissfulness of this moment right now. Unfabricated. Right? And what does unfabricated mean? And, this whole idea of, this carefully curated and constructed idea of who we are is nothing other than the constant source of our suffering. Right? So no matter how amazing we think we are, no matter how brilliant we think we are, no matter how patient we think we are, no matter how insightful we think we are, no matter how whatever, right? All of this essentially contributes to our experience of suffering at any given time. And so when we let go of this attachment, when we let go of how tightly we're grasping, right, then we're actually able to open up to the bliss of just being natural, right? No big storyline needed. Free of clinging to characteristics, luminous clarity is unobscured, right? So what is mind? Mind is this, mind is that, mind has to be this other thing. There's this Hatha Yoga or Dzogchen program I taught for all of 2022, and we're going to do another iteration of this for all of 2023 through Pure Land Farms. And what is very fascinating is, and this has come up not only just in the context of that program, but even in the context of Mahamudra. I think whenever we're talking about the non-dual state in particular, all this kind of like anxiety arises from time to time around everything needing to be a particular way. Like we become a little like indoctrinated by our Buddhism, right? So that we have to make sure that we're compassionate. We have to make sure that we're patient. We have to make sure that we're insightful. We have to make sure that, we have this ability to concentrate. We have to make sure of all of this stuff. And if we deviate from this, then we're bad practitioners. If we deviate from this, we're not good people, right? And this is like, this kind of attachment or this clinging to characteristics, right? And what comes up, right, is that really when we are able to rest freely, spontaneously, and with ease in the moment, truly, right, that everything that we are able to do arises as compassion. It arises as the expression of patience. It arises as generosity. It arises as all of these things. It's not necessarily the case that we need to add all of these characteristics or that we need to preference all of these characteristics. And then we see this in ourselves, right? Like the way we beat ourselves up, day in and day out. Oh, I don't have all the characteristics. And, the fascinating thing about this, especially within the context of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, is that we are fundamentally pure from the beginning, right? So why do we need to cultivate all of this stuff, right? It's important to really, investigate. So maybe I'll leave that there. Beyond intellect, non-conceptuality is spontaneously present. So, this intellect, SEM, right? Conceptual mind, trying to figure everything out, spatial relationships, like looking at these boxes of all these faces, right? Who these people are, trying to figure out who they are based on their name, right? Trying to figure you out by how you look, and then figure out the people who aren't on the screen, trying to figure out why they're not on the screen and, what they're hiding from. Our intellect is trying to figure everything out all the time, trying to figure out our practice, trying to figure out what this means, trying to figure out what that means, trying to figure out the meaning of it all, right? All this is SEM just working and working and working and working and working and analyzing and comparing and contrasting and all these things, right? And it's not that we have to lobotomize ourselves. The mind is not a problem. Attachment to mind is a problem, right? Reacting to mind is a problem. Always making mind about this thing is the problem, right? Rather than everybody else, right? Me and mine, me and mine, me and mine. Right? And so, beyond the intellect, non-conceptuality is spontaneously present means that when we let go of this, me, mine, this analysis, this intellectual brilliance, then we can actually be in direct experience of the mind as it is. And it's a difference between a practice that is forced and a practice that is spontaneous. A practice that is trying to be something as opposed to a practice that is, just what's happening. Without effort, may these experiences be unceasing. So, what does it mean to practice without effort? And this is actually a lot harder for those of us who were indoctrinated by like capitalism, right? And like Western educational models, right? What does it mean? You have to study hard. You need to work really hard for this. You need to produce, right? If you invest all of this time and energy into Dharma practice, only then will it produce results, right? It really becomes incumbent upon us to take seriously these ideas that we find within both, Mahamudra and also Dzogchen, that you are completely perfect now. Like you have all of the qualities now, right? That your mind is essentially the same mind as Rangjung Dorje, the same mind as Samantabhadra, the same mind as Dorje Chung, the same mind as Guru Rinpoche, the same mind as Vajravarahi, right? The same. All we need to do is stop. All we need to do is rest into this spontaneously. All we need to do is trust. And this is super hard. There's an article in The Guardian that I read last night and this morning about how hard it is for people to trust, in both the UK, but in also the United States, to trust in the goodness of people, to trust in the goodness of ourselves, to trust. So I'm going to extrapolate this, to trust into our basic wakefulness. How hard it is to trust that my core is essentially Buddhahood, right? But what Rangjung Dorje is saying, and again, like for those who haven't been here for the first couple sessions, Rangjung Dorje was a contemporary and friend of Longchenpa, great Dzogchen master, right? And so, like, what they are both saying, right, is that your core is fundamentally awakened, right? We don't need to create all this stuff, right? We don't need to memorize a whole bunch of texts. I don't have any right here. We don't need to do all this stuff. We don't need to, we don't even need to polish the mirror of our mind. Our mind is naturally luminous. It's naturally clear. And so this practice is really about, settling into this without effort. So without effort, may these experiences be unceasing. Put your work down. Put down your tools. Put down your books. Put down all your stuff. Right? And as my root teacher once pointed out to me, and I've said this a million times, if you have to read, try and read and forget at the same time, especially about Mahamudra. Like, don't accumulate knowledge, right? There's a big difference between, it doesn't mean be stupid, but in both these traditions, Mahamudra and Dzogchen, there's a big emphasis on practicing like a simpleton, right? Practicing like somebody who doesn't really know what's going on. Why? Well, because our intellectual mind gets so wrapped up in trying to figure everything out that there's this intense analysis of just basically sitting in open awareness. Right? So letting this whole thing just be natural and relaxed, and trusting into our experience. On New Year's Eve day, there was some kind of thing I was experiencing, and I got all tense, right? And we were visiting friends. We were staying in an Airbnb, and I went to the living room of this Airbnb, and there was a really comfortable easy chair, which like I never sit in. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna sit here and just rest into Rigpa, you know. And lo and behold, after a little bit of time, there was an experience of open clarity, natural ease, right? The conceptual mind, Sem, was there, right? And it was able to just be left. You do your thing, Sem. I'm going to rest into this, luminosity. Right? And this luminosity is no different than the mind of my teachers. Right? And so all of a sudden I'm, in upstate New York, sitting in an easy chair, doing profound guru yoga, just resting, into the spacious ease. No analysis, no sadhana. I'm not there. Oh my God, I don't have my pechas. Easy, spontaneous. Right. This is what all the masters of the Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions talk about. So then Rangjung Dorje goes on to say, clinging to excellent experience is free right where it is. Negative thoughts, confusion is naturally pure in the expanse. When ordinary mind manifests, there is nothing to adopt or reject, no freedom or fruition. May we realize the truth of essential reality, free from fabrications. Right, so clinging to excellent experience is free right where it is. Right, so this is where we get into these terms like rangjo, right? So like spontaneously liberated. Clinging, oh, I need good experiences. In order for me to feel like affirmed in my practice, it all has to be good. May I only have good experiences. For those of you who recite aspiration prayers, like, may my practice always be good, be good, be good, be good. Like on one level, that's okay, on a relative level. On another level, it's a little complicating because here we are preferencing and we really need these good experiences, right? If we're able to just, rest easily into the practice of Mahamudra, whatever happens is what's happening. And that which is happening has no self-nature. That which is happening in the moment is just left to be primordially pure, right? Naturally free, naturally liberated. Negative thoughts, confusion. So the confusion born of negative thoughts is naturally pure in the expanse, right? And so there are many ways we can begin to look at this. One is in a slightly more analytic way. We can just, look directly into our own experience of mind. The next time, you find yourself irritated or frustrated or sad or feeling lost, right? Or feeling super excited, right? Really, really joyful. Look into that experience and try to find it. Where is it? Where are these things? Right? But the confusion from negative thoughts, right? The confusion from obscurations. In other texts, they talk about how actually I think it's Shabkar who says, when a bird flies across the sky, it doesn't leave a trace, does it? Right? And so same with our thoughts, the most murderous thought, I could say, I'm going to pick on someone now. So I could say, I'm going to pick on Melissa. I want to murder Melissa. Boy, the next time I see Melissa, I'm totally going to do her in. Even that thought doesn't leave a stain. It doesn't leave a tattoo, doesn't leave dust, right? Doesn't leave a smear, right? The mind is naturally primordially pure. So then I'm going to pick on somebody else. I'm going to pick on Eric. I'm jealous of Eric's plants. Those plants are so nice. And exactly. I feel super, super jealous. And boy, I'm full of envy, And then I'm going to look at how comfortable Ekta's couch looks. And why don't I have a couch like that? All the grasping, all of the fear, all of the, oh, Richard looks really tough. He's going to come and kick my butt. Thank God he's in New Zealand and not here in Brooklyn. So any kind of thing like, that we're feeling uh, leaves no trace, leaves no stain. Like, what an amazing thing, right? This is actually, I'm working on translating this Mahamudra text right now, and there's this term uh, that gets to this. So this term for adventitious stains, you find this exact term used in other translations of this particular text, but you actually there's another book I have that's on luminosity, like in a lot of different contexts, and there's a whole chapter on the use of this term adventitious. So anyway, in this Mahamudra text I'm translating here, it's translated as adventitious afflictive emotions, right? Why are they advantageous? They're advantageous because we experience them and then we see, oh, I was reacting to, my kind of preconceived ideas about these things. But when I look, they come, they go. They leave no stain, they leave no tattoo, they don't leave a mark, right? And this isn't to say, oh, well, then go, cultivate as much negative thought as possible. But what it does mean is that whatever arises, good or bad, right, is essentially the same, especially in terms of the mechanics, right? And here it's helpful to look just at mind as a mechanism. Positive thoughts arise, negative thoughts arise. What's the difference? Like, essentially, where is the difference? Neutral thoughts, whatever that is, right? And just look. Where do they come from? Where do they go? Right? It's not like in cartoons, there's a little devil here and a little angel here, and they're like feeding the thoughts. That's not, that's very binary, right? And not true. But so for us to begin to kind of look at these, it helps in so many ways, right? It also helps us to be able to love ourselves, right? Oh, I am not a terrible mistake because I'm going through this cycle of, negative thoughts. These negative thoughts arise and they dissolve. So, negative thoughts confusion is naturally pure in the expanse. When ordinary mind manifests, there's nothing to adopt or reject, no freedom or fruition. So here too, the term ordinary mind is sometimes a translation for the word sam, or cognitive mind, right? So when the ordinary mind of, the stuff and that stuff, the stuff we need to do later today, for example, pick up the kids, make dinner, blah, 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 all that stuff, we don't need antidotes for this, right? There's nothing to adopt, nothing to reject, no freedom, no fruition. Just let everything happen. Don't try and control. This gets back to Tilopa's 6 nails. Don't try to control. Don't try to figure anything out. Just let this experience play. And like a bird sitting on a tree, watch. Just watch. And this is the way that we distill wisdom from the experience of mind, right? The experience of all of our ordinariness. And may we realize the truth of essential reality, free from fabrications, right? Free from having to do anything, free from antidotes, free from getting into weird yogic postures, free from handfuls of amulets, free from malas, free from, ritual objects, right? Free from all of that. So then he goes on to say, beings by nature have always been Buddhas. Yet not realizing this, they wander endlessly in samsara. So what I was talking about at the beginning, like this kind of aspirational taking stock. Just feel into how you have contained yourself into the experience of samsara over the past 3 days. Your highs, your lows. Maybe you lost your temper. Maybe you didn't lose your temper externally, but you kept it in. Inside, though, there was some poison, right? Right? Maybe at another person or a dynamic, a thing, right? It doesn't matter. Maybe the ideas of who you think you are or who you think you should be, or what a good person is, what a good practitioner really is. Right? These are examples of how we keep ourselves coming back, reinvesting, heavily addicted to the mechanics of samsara, right? Heavily addicted to my brokenness, heavily addicted to my shame, heavily addicted to not being able to see or let myself experience myself as an awakened Buddha. Not realizing this, we wander endlessly in samsara. I mean, I don't think it's just me. I can find all these ways, all these reasons, all these examples. Even just in the past couple of days. May we have unbearable compassion for sentient beings whose suffering knows no bounds. So we don't have to develop these intensely complicated thought experiments in how to generate compassion. We just need to understand how we suffer. Right? How I can't let myself arise as awakened. How I need to make this whole thing about me. How I take personally every little thing. How I love to blame people for getting it wrong. Every little thing. Right? Things that have no real consequence. Oh, don't look at me like that. But we don't even have to necessarily go so far as to, I'm not saying you don't have to do Tonglen, right? But I am saying we don't have to necessarily exert so much effort. We just need to feel into how much I am truly suffering in the moment and understand that I'm not alone, right? It's almost as if suffering is the glue that holds the world together, which is really intense, really kind of depressing. But this is what makes Buddhas so rare, right? These beings that can dance through reality, dance through apparent phenomenon, precisely because they're not making everything about them, right? Precisely because they're not trying to correct everything that's going on, right? There's this certain kind of, an appearance of being carefree, right, that we're all jealous of, potentially. I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm jealous of. This unbearable compassion radiates unceasing love. As it does, its emptiness of essence nakedly shines. May we never leave the supreme and unerring path of union. May we meditate upon it all day and all night. So this unbearable compassion has to begin at home, right? It has to begin with you, and it has to begin with me. It has to begin with, just like I said in the beginning of the session, like really asking ourselves, if not now, when? Right? Like, when am I going to liberate myself? When am I going to really settle in seriously into knowing my own mind? When am I really going to know how to be able to stop creating my own suffering and suffering for other beings? This is like the ultimate self-care, the ultimate self-love. And then once we begin to recognize, oh, like everybody else is experiencing at least some form of the suffering that I am creating for myself, this compassion is natural, right? It flows. It has so much strength and power. And I mean, we begin to, dare I say, even be able to look at people who are very, 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 fraught, right, by their own blindness. Right? And we can all name people, in our lives and our shared kind of collective experience. People are so fraught, they can't see past their blind spots, and they keep making all of these mistakes. They keep hurting people. They keep harming people. Right? It's easy for us to be like, oh, that's a bad person. Right? But once we begin to recognize, oh my gosh, like, I've done this too. I am still doing this. I am doing this unconsciously. That's how bad this is. Right? Then we begin to understand, oh, like, may the pit of samsara be emptied. And may I help. It's such a profound spiritual bypass to think that we can't, that we can experience awakening without doing that work, right? Without understanding, oh, the harm I do to myself, the harm I do to others, all based on my ignorance of not being able to recognize the primordial purity of my own being. And by extension, the primordial purity of all of the beings here. Everybody here, watching, participating, everybody in wherever the neighborhood you happen to be, all the people walking around or driving cars, or all the people getting into arguments right now, all the people falling in love right now. Every being, not just humans, all beings. This is why we do this, right? It's not like some kind of like capitalist enterprise just trying to screw over your neighbor, or um, look incredible. Right? This is really kind of like a 5-alarm fire. Right? We're on fire. The world's on fire. Our neighbors are on fire. Our enemies are on fire. Our loved ones are on fire. We're all on fire, unfortunately, for very similar reasons. We can't even blame people. Oh, it's your fault because blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's my fault too. We're all in this together. And so we have to start by being able to value ourselves, by being able to love ourselves, by being able to take ourselves seriously, take our practice seriously, take our power seriously, take the power of our practice seriously, take the power of our aspirations seriously. And as we do this compassion radiates unceasing love. May we never leave the supreme and unerring path of union, right? The path of emptiness and compassion. May we meditate upon it day and night, day and night. From the power of meditation comes superior eyes and clairvoyance. Right? So these siddhis, right? So the ability to see things, to know things, etc., be fleet-footed, find objects. Sentient beings are matured. Experiences of Buddha realms are cultivated perfectly, and prayers to attain the Buddha's qualities are fulfilled. Right. So, from the power of meditation arise the siddhis. Through the power of our meditation, sentient beings are matured, like ourselves and others. From the power of our meditation, experiences of Buddha realms are cultivated perfectly. And from the power of meditation, prayers to attain Buddha's qualities are fulfilled. May we attain the enlightenment that brings maturation, cultivation, and fulfillment to perfection. And so may our practice lead to the experience of awakening. May that experience of awakening not happen in 5 years, or 10 years, or 10 aeons, or 30 aeons. May it happen now, right? Like looking in the mirror, recognizing your original face, recognizing your true nature, settling into your basic goodness. Right? This is born of meditation, but it's not necessarily born of years and years and years and years and years and years and years of practice. It can happen like this, right? Keep that option open. Keep that opportunity there. By the power of great compassion of the victorious ones and their sons and daughters of the 10 directions, and the power of all the immaculate virtue there is, may my own and all sentient beings' completely pure aspiration prayers be perfectly fulfilled. And so this is the song or prayer. Oops. Song or prayer, who knows, who cares? Yes, I'm curious if anybody has any questions about this, or why we're here, why I'm here. Or concerns. Oh, yep, please, Marianne.
This is my first time joining, so thank you. I had a couple of questions, actually. One thing that was coming to me very strongly as you're talking is I listened to a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh and how he would always say, just be lazy. And that was kind of coming to me. I'm like, oh, is it that easy? You know? So that was one thing that was coming. But then the thing that kept tripping me up as you're talking, I was thinking, okay, maybe I can be a little less hard on myself for what's going on in my own head, right? Cool. But what about my actions? You know? And that's where it was tripping me up a bit, because I was thinking, okay, maybe I can let go a little bit of judgment of other people. Fine. But what about those things where I'm just like, no, I don't think you should be doing that. You know? And that's where I was getting a bit stuck or confused.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a good question. I'll do the really easy part first, which is, the first part of your question. So I will say that I think it is quite easy, but it's so easy that it's hard, kind of thing. Like um, with respect to just letting go. You know, um, let go is two short words, right? But what it takes and what we feel viscerally sometimes in our own experience, our own bodies, around just letting go is they're like worlds of experience, worlds of fear, worlds of anxiety, worlds of tension. You know, it's almost as if it's a muscle that we just, like maybe you broke your arm and you have a cast, and the cast comes off, and the muscles have atrophied a bit. It's almost as if our muscles have atrophied, and it's hard for us to let go, right? Because we're used to doing so much work. Um, with respect to, you know, being hard on ourselves around our conduct, I think it's definitely worth stating that we can always do a better job, so to speak. We can always be a little more kind, a little more compassionate. Um, and I think we can approach this in a way that is not, that doesn't cause harm to ourselves. And I think this is the kind of key piece is really learning to be easy with ourselves. Like there's this instinct to always want to get everything right, you know, and especially within the context of Dharma practice, people will often expect, the first time they learn a practice, oh, well, let me get it right the first time. Okay, well, that maybe that's not so realistic the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time. But, a lot of these practices are meant to, you show up and you do it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And somewhere within this process, right, we settle into ease, right? Whatever practice it is, it becomes natural. And so even if we find ourselves making mistakes, or even if we find ourselves, going through some moment where we're like flat out rebelling, against our practice, because this happens too, right? There's a kind of like this aspect of like ego that, when bruised, just wants to push back or fight back or do the opposite. And again, like I think there's a lot of benefit to be gained by stepping back a little bit and looking at our practice from a balcony view, so to speak, and not from right here. Or as I am acting, maybe I'm making a mistake, and I'm like, oh God, Justin, you're terrible. Like, why do you keep making these mistakes? You're like a terrible practitioner. You never know what you're doing. I mean, that's not hard to do, right? I think all of us here are pretty good at that, like throwing rocks at ourselves. What's a lot harder to do is to recognize, oh, wow, like, I just made a mistake or whatever, and then keep going, right? And not because we're sociopaths, but because we can actually like let it roll off our shoulders, like, oh yeah, man, like I am totally not perfect. I make mistakes all the time. I just made one. And yeah, maybe there's a little repair that needs to happen in the moment, or maybe it's not that kind of thing, right? Where it's just like, hey, okay, I'll keep going. But, not being, I guess the question is like how not to invest in the kind of self-harm that causes us to beat ourselves up. Because that's kind of what it is, right? Like samsara, there is an element of self-harm in samsara. Like me not letting myself just be who I am. Me not letting myself feel what is authentically arising. Me not showing up as I truly am and thinking I need to appear like everybody else. And if I'm not, oh my God, So I think, I don't know how that sounds to you.
Disclaimer, my nephew is playing with his cars now.
Oh, that's good.
You can probably hear that in the background. Anyways, no, I feel that, and I'm glad you said that. I guess my question is more though, like, okay, I have a lot of aspirations to do some things, and I'd really, really, really like to do them, you know, and like that's like kind of a form of clinging, isn't it, right?
Mhm.
But I'm like, but I can't totally let that go. Like that, or at least that's what I'm kind of feeling on this inside. Is like, no, I think there's some work there to like work on those things and to invest, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. Like, what happens if you just let them go? Like, just energetically. Like,
Mm,
do they go? Do they actually even go anywhere? Right? Like,
mm,
there's a difference between like internal grasping, right, which is like I need to do this or I want to do this or and all that stuff is great, right? Like change the world, make the world a better place. Great, important. I mean, everybody should work on this. And though, like, it becomes a work of samsara when we are holding it so tightly and we can't really understand how we need to regulate, what we need to regulate, what letting go means. Like you can actually let go of your grasp and actually still have everything you want to do be right in front of you. It's just releasing from that grip. And this takes work. It takes um, it's a very personal process too, right? Like why we hold on to things, what the causal factors are for not wanting to let go, right? Um, and it's our work to feel into this and just let go with ease. There a number of years ago, I used to run this Dharma center for Gyaltsen Rinpoche here in Brooklyn. It's one of my teachers, and I was teaching shamatha to some people, and one was a very brilliant banker, and the other was a really brilliant musician. And at the same day, like same session, they I was telling them to just try as best as you can to let go of any kind of thought activity that happens in the moment, right? And they're both two people who derive a lot of professional and personal pleasure from the brilliance of their mind and everything that arises from it. So the banker is kind of constantly like trying to figure out how to like be more efficient, be better, be more cutting edge, all of this stuff. And so like his thought activity was super important to him, and the musician too would sit in meditation and lines of music would come to him and things like this. And so the idea of letting go of these things uh, was terrifying to both of them. And I asked them if they could let go, and if they did, whether or not like the thought activity would disappear, right? Or the brilliance of like the lines of music that might come just spontaneously evaporated. And they both were able to confirm that no, well, actually, when letting go, I was letting go of the tightness, right? Easing from the clinging. Whatever came, right? But it was not the kind of thing that I had to control, right? And there is an aspect, maybe this is like more of an American culture thing, but where we feel the need to control everything, and one of there are a couple of things to look at. One is fear, right? The other is trust. Like when we're holding on super tight to something, it is usually because we don't trust that it will just be there, right? We think it will be gone, or we can't trust that there is an unending supply of cogitation, which there happens to be. This cogitation happens, and this cogitation is so painfully basic in its mechanics. Poke the mind, cogitation happens. Let go of the mind, everything settles into ease. We are that simple, right? Experimenting with this, though, is this meditation that was being talked about in the second to last stanza, where it's like from the power of meditation comes superior eyes and clairvoyance. I'm slightly changing this up a little bit, but from the power of meditation, sentient beings are matured. Experiences of Buddha realms are cultivated perfectly. So this experimentation, like without that, meditation is just, it's some kind of rote exercise. So kind of stepping into the edginess of, oh boy, I feel a little bit of tension, like, or pushback from trying to let go. Well, that's perfect. Maybe that's where practice should be in that moment. Or if we're feeling tension or edginess about trusting into our own Buddha nature, because this is a thing that, other people have a hard time, really opening up to, well, then that's the thing to kind of, rest into. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or? Oh yeah, Melissa.
Hi, I don't have a question, but I wanted to tell people something about the new year that is very helpful. But Cece, you and your cat, and Gandon, you and your dog are exemplifying compassion. It's very funny. The Dalai Lama was giving teachings at Bodhgaya Nagarjuna's commentary on Awakening the Mind, which is a really beautiful text you can find online. And they had arranged that, and then people were doing a long life ceremony for him. And it happened to be on New Year's Day, and that was unplanned. And he talked about how auspicious that is for this year, and that just I felt a lot of relief with that. And he said this before, that he'll live beyond 100, and he confirmed that he'll live at least another 15 years. But anyway, that's a New Year's thing I wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Ekta.
Yeah, so I have been sitting in my soup for a little bit since we started. And the first thing I want to say is letting go in practice, off practice. That has been something that opened up at the end of 2022. So I basically stopped tracking. Like I was getting some kind of high in tracking the number of days I had meditated at a stretch, how many hours, how many minutes. And it was like a dopamine hit. And when I would go to retreats, I would come back and I would log it like one psychopath of some kind. But it felt like that. It was so frenzied in that sense. And now I've stopped doing it. And the relief I feel and the immense coming back to center when I see that, I don't always use an app now. So when it comes down to a 0 and I'm starting again, it is a beautiful realignment. So I am discovering what letting go looks like in that sense, right? So that was the first thing I wanted to say when you talked about letting go. And I was like, yes, this feels like the right thing for me. The second thing that came up for me was, all of these shoulds about helping others, being there for others, being a good Buddhist, being this, being that. And I was suffering when you were speaking, Lama Justin, because I was like, how do I reconcile this with my work, being a psychotherapist, being there, and I was like, I have been suffering for the last week because I was helping someone from our community to get some help. And it, from the 29th, talking this person off the ledge, and suffering so much myself. Finally, they went to the hospital night before last. And I kept asking myself, you asked, how are you adding to your suffering? I did not have the spoons for this. I did not. And I jumped in without realizing. And I kept asking, even through this practice, which was like, how do I not? How do I not? Like, how do I, what are you talking about? I was feeling a bit frustrated, but my process. So eventually it opened up. On that day when I didn't have the spoons, I had to tell that person to go to the hospital. This person should have gone to the hospital 5 days ago. I added to their misery and mine. It's very hard to admit that. It's very hard to admit that because South Asians hate going to the psych ward. They hate it. Like there is so much stigma to it, but they could have. And even though I know that I did much better than his psychiatrist, I did much better than the people around him. I was the one that told him which ER to go to. I told him how to advocate for himself. He should have still done it 5 days ago and not 2 days ago. So this has told me that it is okay to prioritize my spoons. And there was something that I was getting out of being good, or being a good therapist, or being this, being that. And no, like, I think I'm going to be ruthless with myself, not with other people, but with myself when it comes to saying no. This is my internalized be a good person bullshit that I've been living with for 41 years, running on empty, but still immolate oneself to provide light and warmth. Not gonna happen, not today. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Oh, keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
But this is it, like, like every time I come, and I'm still sitting with what you said 2 sessions ago, I missed the last one, which was people confuse self-awareness with the self. It is on my computer and it is on a post-it. So I'm sitting with a lot is opening up in terms of letting go. And in silence, we can understand what we have to let go. So I'm kind of a Mahamudra junkie now. I hate that word, but here I am.
Yeah, thank you, Ekta. Yeah, I mean, with respect to the last little bit about silence, one of my teachers, Dr. Nita, said recently, like, if you are having, like, basically, go through your meditation experience, right, your meditation practice, and then shut up. And then the shut up is really about, like, don't extrapolate, right? Because this is the thing, like, we'll have an experience and we project out onto the world or onto ourselves, right? What does this mean? Or therefore dot 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 dot, and there's so much wisdom in just listening to ourselves, listening to what other people need, listening to when maybe we want to get up to act, with positive intention, right? But maybe it's the getting up and act that's triggering more of the desire to act than an actual skillfulness, Yeah, I mean, this is all, again, going back to that one stanza about, like, through meditation, Buddhahood arises. Through meditation, all the cities arise. Through this constant distillation of experience, right? This is how, like, this wisdom born of your experience, the wisdom born of Eric's experience, the wisdom born of anyone's experience, authentically arises, right? But we need to kind of, get out of our heads and get into the practice itself, right? Get out of our own way. Very good. Very nice. Excellent. Well, maybe we can pause it here. And so next week, we're going to have something totally new, because we're done with third Karmapa's Mahamudra aspiration prayer, which is nice. I don't know what it will be yet, so we'll just see. I want to thank you all for being here today. And maybe we can dedicate the merit that all sentient beings can recognize that right below the surface of their suffering, right below the surface of samsara itself, is nirvana, is perfect Buddhahood. And then we don't need to look elsewhere. May all sentient beings recognize that their experience of mind is enough, that their mind is inherently pure, naturally luminous, stainless, clear. And may all sentient beings be motivated by their own suffering, their own limitation, their own sense of lack, as a way of keeping their eyes open to the fact that we are all in this together. And may all sentient beings be able to respond appropriately, lovingly, with deep compassion to one another until the pit of samsara is emptied. Take very good care of yourselves. Happy New Year. See you soon. Be well. Bye-bye.